Hi, welcome back. Oh my god, these introductions are always the most awkward part to film, and it's so hard. So we're just gonna move over that part, and we're gonna talk about what this video is about. Basically, Steph Bohrer recently posted a book recommendations tag video where she made her own tag, and I have been waiting for years for Book Talk to bring back tags, and Steph Bohrer just brought it back. So now we have to do it because seriously, guys, that was when it was fun. It was so fun watching those tags and challenges. I think the first Booktube video I've ever watched was I think it was a Clockwork Readers book, do I have that book challenge video? And I remember just discovering that Booktube was a thing, and I was like, what? Where has it been? Why did no one tell me that this exists? And basically, yeah, those were really fun. So I'm glad we're bringing those back. But anyway, I'm doing her recommendation tag that she posted. I don't know how recently. I don't know when this video is going to go up. So we'll see. But a while ago, she posted it. So now we're doing it. The first question is a book you tell people is your favorite. And for that, I have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Basically, I don't know if this is my favorite book, ever, because that's just too hard to pick. But if someone asks me, when people do ask me, I tell them this is my favorite because it is pretty close to the top. I feel like it's a three-way tie between this and a couple other series and stuff. So I wouldn't, in my head, it's not my favorite, but when I tell people what my favorite book is, this is definitely it. It's so good. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's underrated because it's still pretty relatively popular, but compared to Daisy Jones, compared to The Seven Husbands and Malibu Rising, it's not as popular, and I feel like it should be because this is my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and I think it's probably one of her most creative because the entire book is formatted like an interview. It says the character's name and then their recollection of the events that happen. Essentially, this book is about this band called Daisy Jones and the Six, and it takes place years after they've broken up, all these stuff went down, they're no longer a band, and then they're recalling what happened all those years ago that led to their breakup in an interview. And it's about addiction, it's about loss, it's about your relationship with yourself and with the people around you. It's genuinely one of the most well-written books I've ever read, and I love it so much. I read it all the time. The audiobook is also really good. I don't usually recommend audiobooks, but I definitely recommend the audiobook for this because the way that it's formatted and the way that they have different speakers, different voice actors for each character. And so when you're listening to it, it feels like you're listening to a real podcast, and I love the audiobook too. It's so immersive. It's so good, guys. I recommend this and the audiobook. Read this, then listen to the audiobook. The next question is a book that is your guilty pleasure, and I'm so scared to answer this because I know people are going to come for me because this is a series and that I've talked about before and that I've said I don't like this author, I don't like anything she writes, I don't like the way she writes, and I stand by that, except this book is the exception, and that is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Now, before you guys come at me with pitchforks, I can explain, okay? Let me speak my piece. When I read this, I was in 7th grade. I loved it. I read till I think it was Queen of Shadows, and then around Empire of Storms, I started getting bored. I stopped reading it, and then I was watching a bunch of reviews on it later on, and I realized the reason I got bored was because the entire trajectory of the story just changed once think it was the third book. After the third book was done, like everything changed. It just kind of like switched to like a whole other storyline. Everything else was like irrelevant. And I didn't like that because I liked the way it was going, and it felt like I was actually like reading a whole other series that I didn't enjoy. And I feel like the books after this are like the start of like the Sarah J. Maas universe with like fairies and Rhysand, you know? So I didn't like that. But the first three books, amazing. I loved them. I was obsessed with them. I reread them sometimes. I haven't reread them in a while, but I used to reread them like every once a year, I think, because it was like comforting. It was fun. I liked the characters. I love Selena. I love Dorian. I love Kale, and it was fun. And then like the writing got very Sarah J. Maas, and I didn't enjoy it anymore. So that's all I have to say. I bought the entire series for my birthday, and it cost a lot of money, so I've never given it away. But I do plan on donating it eventually, because I know like someone else will enjoy it and will like actually like it and not just keep it for videos like this. So yeah, that's my story. Please don't kill me. Question 3 is a book everyone loved but you didn't. And I don't talk about this book a lot on my channel. I think I've mentioned it once, and that's because it was just so unmemorable to me, and I was like really disappointed, and I didn't really have anything to say. And that's Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is the book that in 2020 or 2021 had Book Talk like in a chokehold. Like it had full control. It had like Book Talk in the palm of its hand. But and then I bought it because I was like, oh, I'm gonna love this book. I know I'm gonna love it. Like, it's so interesting. I'm gonna love it. I didn't love it. I didn't even like it. It was so unenjoyable. Like, I was reading it, and then I'd be like interested for like a little bit, and then I'd get very bored because nothing would be happening. And I feel like the build up to like what would happen if everyone found out was so dramatic, and it was so dramatic to the point where when what happened actually happened, like, what am I saying? When what they feared would happen actually happened, like, not, like, it wasn't as big as it should have been. It wasn't as, like, life-changing as it should have been. And the politics in this book are just so iffy that I don't know what to say. But yeah, this is a book that I think I saw in every single recommendation video I've ever watched in 2019. Sorry, why do I keep decreasing it? In 2020 or 2021. And it wasn't good, guys. I don't recommend it. It was mid. It was okay. I don't know. I don't like it. But honestly, I do get how people can like it. It's very cute. It's very, like, fun, quick to read. But no. Question 4 is a book you read the fastest, and for this one I wasn't sure because if you follow me on Goodreads, you know that like I read most books like in a day, maybe 2, and most of the books that I read that quickly I don't end up enjoying because I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I don't have enough time to like process it, or maybe it's because usually they're like the quick, fast kind of books, like rom-coms, which I don't love that much, but I don't know what it is. Maybe that's why. But the books that I do end up enjoying, it takes me like a while to read. But I did end up finding one book that I read in a day that I really, really loved. And that is The Stationery Shop by Marhan Kamali. This book, guys, I mentioned it a couple times, and I will mention it until the day I die because it is so good. I think it's a book that everyone has to read. Like, if you like Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you will love this book because it has like kind of the same vibes. I wouldn't say the same theme, but definitely like the same vibes. It's so good. I will shove this book in your faces for like the rest of my life, for as long as the channel like keeps going. But essentially, it's about this girl named Roya who meets this boy named Behrman, and they end up falling in love. And it takes place in 1950s Tehran. So Roya and Behrman decide to get married, except like a couple days before they're getting married, Behrman sends Roya a letter saying, I don't think we should get married, I think it's a bad idea, blah blah blah. She's obviously like really heartbroken, And then it kind of like shifts to like her moving to California with her sister. And it's like present day. She's married, she has a son, she's like happy, she's kind of like, she's settled. And then she runs into Bethman's like nephew or son or somebody, and she goes to meet Bethman, where she like kind of like it's her resolving all these things that happened all those years ago that she never got answers to, and it's her finally getting those answers. Like, why did he call off the marriage? Why did he like lead her on and then not follow through? Whatever. It's so good. I wouldn't categorize it as a romance. It's definitely like based around like a romance central plot, but I wouldn't categorize it as that because there's just so much more going on, because it's really about like her life, her relationship with herself, her relationship with Bethman, like all these things, and I love it. I love it so much. I read it in a day and then I cried. I have 2 books for question number 5, and the question is a book that deserves more hype. And I have like the book that I use as my token for this like genre, and then I have like the book that I want to talk more about. And the first book is actually The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. And I talk about this book a lot on this channel. Like in almost every single video I think I've talked about it. So I'm not gonna talk any more about it. Just read it. The next book though is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. I think relatively to The Last Magician, this is more popular and has more hype than that one does, but it's still like pretty under the radar. Like there's a very small niche in Book Talk and Booktube that reads this book and likes it, and I loved it because it's like Six of Crows meets something. I don't know what it meets, but it's Six of Crows meets something. It's like the heist perspective of it, aspect of it, the found family, it's all in here, and it's so good, and it's a trilogy, and all the characters are so compelling and so diverse, like genuinely so diverse. I love the diversity in it. I feel like it's not just like the shallow kind where there's just like one token character of color who also happens to be the only gay character, and there you go, you have your diversity. No, there's genuinely like genuine diversity in this. So read it. It's so good. I think it deserves so much more hype. I think it does get a lot of hype, but I think it deserves more because I think the hype has died down at this point. Question 6 is a book that is becoming a movie/TV show. And at first I was like, I'll do Shadow and Bone. But then I realized like it's not becoming one because it already is a show. And then I thought Daisy Jones and the Six, but I've already recommended that in the first question. So after doing some research on which of my favorite books were becoming movies or TV shows, I stumbled upon something that has changed my life irrevocably forever. And that is The Inheritance Games, which is becoming a TV show. I don't know when. I don't know who's making it. I don't think they've cast it either yet. But it's becoming a TV show. And I will never recover until it is a TV show and until I can watch it, because I know it's going to be so good. I know the vibes are going to be amazing, and I feel like this is just like a very visual book where if it was turned into a movie or a TV show, it would be like amazing if done right. And so I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the castings too. I don't know when they're going to come out, but I'm so excited. Question 7 is the book you have reread the most. And for that, I have Beach Read by Emily Henry. And if you follow me on Goodreads again, then you know how many times I've read this book. You know that I read it almost quarterly. And at this point, it's an obsession. It's not even a comfort book. It's an obsession. But yeah, that's the book that I probably reread the most. I think it used to be Six of Crows, but this has taken the lead because it's just so quick and easy and fun and wholesome. And after like the first 3 times, you stop crying. For the next question, I have 2 books again, and that is a book from a genre you don't typically read. The first book I have is contemporary fiction, and I don't read contemporary fiction. YA contemporary, I don't read it because I find it cringy, I find it inaccurate the way it depicts like teenagers. I prefer YA fantasy, but this is Every Last Word by Tamara Ireland Stone, and it is one of the only contemporary, like YA contemporary books I've read, and I loved it. Like, I genuinely loved it. It was so good. Like, I read it, I thought it was like, oh, this is fun, this is like better than most, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, I think about this book every single day. It's so good, and it's so real the way it portrays the character and her like mental illness and what it is to be like a teenager. It's so good. I know I say this for every single book, but I don't care. It's so good, guys. It's so like accurate. That's all I can say. Like, I feel like this is the reason I don't read YA contemporary. I feel like they're inaccurate. They're like stereotypical teenagers, and like they kind of put it into a character, and they just like shove all these stereotypes into it, and they're like, yeah, that's how teenagers are, when it's like not true. And imagine Archer, like the song by Taylor Swift, Archer, as a book. This would be it. Like, every single lyric in that book, in that song, is this book. That's it. That's all I have to say. Like, read it. The second book I have for question 8 is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And the reason I said like this is one of the genres I don't typically read is because I think this book is literary fiction. When people told me, I thought it was a romance book. I think like a literary romance, which I do enjoy, but I think it's just literary fiction. I don't think it's a literary romance because there's like no romance in this book. This book is definitely not a romance, but I would still recommend reading it for people who like only read romance, because it's not a romance, but it's definitely about like the love between these two friends, and there is potential for it to be romantic, but I really like that the author didn't make it romantic, because I feel like that just added to the story like so much more, because it's not really about their relationship like together, it's about their relationship with themselves and how that affects like everything that they do together. It's essentially about this girl named Sadie and this boy named Sam who used to be best friends, except they had this like falling out when they were way younger. And years later, they meet in college and they decide to build a video game together. And it's like through their journey of the video game being built to when it kind of blew up and became this huge thing, to them building this company together and growing up and just, you know, facing all these things separately and together. And it's genuinely like a beautiful book. Like, I feel like it could have been shorter, which is one of my complaints for like a lot of books that I read, but it didn't really take away from the book in any way. I felt like some parts were like tiring and didn't need to be added, and it was like boring to get through, but it didn't take away from the book much. It was like 4 stars for me, I think. I think it was either 4 or 5 stars, but it was definitely one of the best books I've ever read. Question 9, again, I have 2 books, which I think is cheating, but whatever. It's a book that deserves all the hype it gets, which is like the opposite of question 5. But for this, I have the basic answer that every other person uses, and then I have the other answer. So let's start with the basic one. It's Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I don't have my regular copy, so I had to use my special edition because I lent my regular copy to someone. But yeah, Six of Crows is basically my basic bitch answer for this question. I feel like everyone uses this if they come across a question like this. But yeah, definitely deserves all the hype it gets and more, because perfection, literally perfection in a book. I have no complaints about this book, nothing. Like, I wouldn't change anything except maybe the cover of the original edition, but that's it. Like, oh my god, if you haven't read it, like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, what are you doing? And I have my personalized answer, which is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. And I think I've mentioned this book a lot too. I feel like a lot of these, I try to like mention books that I haven't mentioned before in most of my videos, but I feel like it always comes down to like 5 main books. But anyway, this book, best enemies to lovers I've ever read. Better than the actual Romeo and Juliet. So good. I don't really need to explain it because it is really popular. And Chloe Gong is just on a roll these days, just coming out with like books left and right. It's crazy and I love it. Question 10 is a book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. And I feel like my answer is very self-explanatory. And it's The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I could have done The Daisy Jones and the Six, but I don't recommend that book when people ask me for recommendations because I kind of gatekeep it, even though like at this point it's not gatekeeping because like it's very popular, but I still don't tell people about it until they've read this and they've enjoyed this, and then I move them on to the harder stuff. Question 11 is a book that has your favorite characters. So for this one, I could have done Clockwork Angel because Will Herondale is my favorite character of all time and he will always be my favorite character. But in terms of characters, it would have to be The Raven Boys because I think this is one of the only books where I love every single character like equally. Like I love every single one of them. I love the Raven Boys, I love Blue, I love all the psychics. So I think that's why I would pick this one. But Will Herondale is still definitely my favorite. But in terms of characters, it's the Raven Boys. Question 12, a book you wish you could live in. I chose The Last Hours by Cassandra Clare because I love this time period and I also love the Shadowhunter like universe as a whole. And so combine those two together and you get this book, which is amazing. I love Edwardian and Victorian England, and I also love the Shadowhunter universe. Like I think it's probably one of my favorite multiverses to exist in books. Like it beats Six of Crows, which is crazy, but definitely one of my favorite worlds. I constantly wish I could live here. It's so fun. I'd probably die as a Shadowhunter, probably die on my first day. I'd probably die getting my marks, but I don't care. I want to live here. For question 13, I have a book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. And I didn't hate this book, but I didn't think I'd like it. I don't know why, but that is A Darker Shade of Magic by V. Schwab. I think I thought this book would be very okay. I didn't think it was my kind of book. And I don't know why, because it's exactly my kind of book. It's 4 parallel versions of London: Red London, Grey London, Black London, White London. And this boy named Kel who can kind of travel between the 4 Londons as a messenger. And one day he's caught smuggling things between the Londons, and that gets him in a lot of trouble. And hence, the next 2 books follow. But yeah, that's what it's about. And I don't know why I didn't think I'd enjoy it, but I ended up loving it. It's 5-star series, and I don't think I'd talk about it enough, which is a crime. 14 is a book that made you cry. And I can go on and on and on because almost every single book I read makes me cry. But for this one, I have a very special one that really, really hurt me. And that is A Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. This book broke me. This book broke me for real. I read this book years ago. I still cry thinking about it. I still cry when I read quotes from it. I still bawl my eyes out watching other people read it in vlogs, because this is PTSD, guys. I swear to God, it is. And I will never recover, and it's okay because I don't want to recover. I just want you guys to read this book and experience the pain that I felt. You can't read this book directly, obviously, because this is the 3rd book, but definitely read the first 2 books and then this, and then come and talk to me. The last question, question 15, is a book that you wish you could read again for the first time. And I can safely say that I have never finished a book and been oh, I wish I could read it again for the first time. But if I did have to pick one, I would pick The Atlas Six by Olivia Blake. And it's more because I feel like the first 2 times I read it, the first time I didn't like it, the second time I did end up enjoying it. But I feel like I didn't understand or I didn't comprehend the theme as much as I wanted to or I could have. And I didn't understand what the book was saying as much as I wanted to. And I feel like if I did, I'd enjoy it so much more, and I'd definitely connect with it way more. I did still really enjoy it, but I feel like I didn't understand it enough to really, really love it. So I do wish I could reread this again for the first time, just to be more immersed in it. But that's it for Steph Bohrer's book recommendation tag. My throat, dead. I sacrificed it. I cannot feel anything. It hurts. It's dry. I need water. But it's okay. It's okay. It was worth it.